Good to have you with us on the 9 p.m. edition of the Urban Debate. Tonight we put the spotlight on an issue that's much debated across the world. The laws and rules regarding abortion. We're going to put the spotlight on the abortion laws in our country, in India. And I do this because two cases have just come up, two different cases where courts have delivered a verdict allowing the pregnant woman to go ahead and abort the pregnancy. Now, the key case that we want to focus with and then have a larger question deals with a 22-year-old. This 22-year-old was repeatedly abused by her husband, subjected to domestic violence. She underwent trauma, both mental and physical. And then she was impregnated at one point. At some point, the husband decided to divorce her as well. When the woman wanted to terminate her pregnancy, it became an issue, which is why she had to go to the court. The Bombay High Court today allowed her plea. And the Bombay High Court said that compelling to continue with pregnancy can cause grave mental health injury. A pregnant woman's actual or reasonable foreseeable environment, current circumstances and foreseeable circumstances are required to be considered for her mental health. And therefore, the Bombay High Court allowed the termination of the pregnancy. But you know what happens in our country? We have instances of verdicts coming in from court on a case-to-case basis. And that's essentially the debating point. If medically the doctors do say that this is not life-threatening to the expecting mother, to the pregnant woman, then should anybody else really have a say on calling for or deciding to abort that pregnancy? That's the question I'm asking tonight to our panelists. Let me say good evening to Trisha Shetty, advocate and founder of She Says NGO, Professor Aloka Sharma, women rights activist, joining me this evening, Mrinalini Deshmukh, senior advocate, Dr. Sonal Kumta, gynecologist from Fortis Hospital, and Poonam Mutreja, executive director for Population Foundation of India. Thank you so much to all of you for being with us. Let me actually go across to Mrinalini first and ask her to, put this in perspective, because I don't think too many of us, even today, Mrinalini, are very well aware of what the abortion law in our country really says. Till what point can you terminate the pregnancy and whose permission do you need?
So, thank you, Tanvi, for inviting me on this. And it's a very important discussion that we are having on this platform this evening. I think it deals basically, before I answer your question, it basically deals with what are the basic rights of a woman in a relationship. And that too, as far as the pregnancy and the continuation of it or otherwise is concerned. Coming back to your question, the laws are very clear, and these laws of abortion are clear under the Medical Termination Pregnancy Act, which is depending upon how many weeks the fetus is there in the womb of the mother, and what is the danger if the pregnancy is extended beyond a particular period of time. Now, in this particular judgment, if I may just restrict myself to this, what the courts have taken, and I think that's a very important point you have to see, which is not only from the medical point of view of the health of the mother and the fetus, if I may use that word, but it is also not only the physical health, but also the emotional and the mental health of the girl. And when I mean mental health, I do not mean that she has any mental disorder or any kind of discrepancies regarding that. Because the well-being of a woman who is a pregnant woman has to be seen in an overall situation by when she's going to go through the process of 9 months and deliver the baby. And her emotional and mental well-being is of extreme importance. In this particular case, and what I think it's a lot of sensitivity with which the courts have gone into, And they've also gone in a very methodical way, not just thinking that, okay, this is what we feel and that's why we're doing. They set up a board, the board gave their report and so on and so forth. I'm not getting into the detailing of that. So by doing this, the courts have said that if a woman feels burdened or it is oppressive, the relationship is oppressive and burdensome for her, I'm quoting the words from the judgment, then in such cases, asking her to continue her pregnancy because of the violence that is perpetrated on her by her, the husband and other people concerned, would be oppressive to her, and we will not permit any kind of oppression. So the sensitivity with which the courts have looked at this has given the woman the right to terminate the pregnancy because she was a victim of domestic violence, and she had suffered a lot as a victim at the hands of the husband concerned. And hence the court felt that if she is not even mentally and emotionally in a state of mind to go through this pregnancy, should she not be given the option to terminate the pregnancy? Because at the end of the day, having a child is not only something which is an exercise, but which is something of a responsibility. And to have a child when the mother, who is the primary caregiver and who's holding the child in the womb for 9 months, if she's in a distressed state of mind and due to the violence perpetrated on her, then under such circumstances, the courts have considered it to be absolutely right to grant her that option to terminate the pregnancy. I think that's the way I would like to look at it.
Yes, and one point that you made, very important, I think, a big takeaway from this, Poonam Mutreja, is the differentiation between saying, okay, you suffer from a mental condition, and so maybe we can look at it, or you just, your mental health is not in the right space right now, and so as a primary caregiver, you don't want to. That is what I think the court has now brought in as another option. Would that be correct, Poonam?
Yes, and I first want to really welcome this judgment. It is 50 years of the MTP Act, Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. I don't know whether there's much to celebrate, but today there's definitely much to celebrate because this judgment does do exactly that. In fact, it privileges a woman to have an abortion for reasons other than abnormality, and the courts. Normally, I have serious problems with the courts going into deciding whether a woman has a reproductive right or not, which she should have if she desires not to have a child. I am absolutely clear on that. And today, there is a judgment which looks at the mental health of a woman, the well-being of a woman. And I think it's a great precedent, and we really must welcome it. And this is going to impact many women in very, very positive ways who wish to have a pregnancy and who do not have the time. Right now, as you all know, only till 20 weeks can a woman, even in the amendment, they haven't changed the amendment from 20 to 24 weeks. Then, we are talking about 50 years when the technology has changed. Today, to induce an abortion is like inducing a birth. It's very safe for a woman to go through a termination after 20 weeks. Why should she have to go to the courts at all? And especially when you have courts that have made archaic and very anti-women regressive judgments. So this particular one, we really, really have to welcome, and it does privilege a woman. And second, we have still not recognized sexual violence or forced sex in many of our acts, and this recognizes that. So we must also welcome that forced sex or unwanted sex is seen as, and sexual violence or sexual force or domestic violence is seen as something that violates a woman's right. So there is a lot more to, and the lawyers on this panel know much better than me what consequences this is going to have in terms of a precedent. And I do want to, though, sadly say that even today, for a woman to get pregnant, to seek an abortion, it's a privilege that the state has to decide.
Yes.
Why should a medical board and state, and what happens? There are no medical boards in villages. What happens to women living in remote villages? And medical termination of pregnancy is something that 16.4 million women go through in India every year, as per the Lancet study of 2015. And that is very revealing that, of course, these are women who don't go to the courts, but it is the young, the underprivileged, the one that are in trouble that end up having to go to the court. You rarely see a privileged woman can pay and go and get an abortion anywhere. It is really unfortunate. So I think this should be an opportunity, Tanvi, for all of us to debate and ask for what really we need for a woman to have her reproductive rights and a right over her body. And I was so glad that the judgment even refers to the perfect position that WHO has on
reproductive rights. Yes. Yes, absolutely. In fact, that's exactly why I wanted to pick this up, to have that larger conversation as well. The MTP Act of 1971 actually legalized and defined abortion only for married women, and at that point said that the maximum gestational limit will be 20 weeks for all indicators. Went on to say that after that you would need a doctor's advice for termination up to 12 weeks and 2 doctors' advice for termination from 12 to 12 to 20 weeks. That was the upper limit. Now that did get changed because we did bring in a new legislation, which is the Amended Act of 2021, but it's not been notified yet. So it's actually not in play right now, the last we checked, which does allow abortion for unmarried women. Abortion allowed beyond 20 weeks up to 24 weeks, but you need a 2-doctor panel to look into it and give a nod, and then the rest of the procedure. The rest of the procedure, Trisha, is what is the conversation here. Do we need, a third person, the state or anybody else, deciding what a woman should do?
Firstly, thank you for having this conversation. And I am so heartened to hear the interventions of the previous 2 panelists. Because the truth is, the culture that we are in does not recognize the autonomy of a woman within the construct of a marriage. Right? So even in this specific judgment, the fact that the court said the core issue is the control a woman has or exercises over her own body and reproductive choice, and that control over it is a basic right for all women, is a very progressive statement made. If you take into light just recently what a Bombay court said, where they said that forced marriage cannot be considered an illegal act and gave anticipatory bail to a husband. So we are living in times where you have an exception under Section 375 of the rape law, which a previous panelist elucidated to, that says sexual intercourse by a man to his wife cannot be considered to be rape. So what that says is a woman does not enjoy autonomy over her body within a marriage. So let me put this into context. If you are being raped by a stranger in a dark alley, you have recourse by law, criminal recourse. If the rapist is your ex-husband, you have recourse. If the rapist is your boyfriend, you have recourse. But should the rapist be your husband, the law in effect says that you have no recourse. This is something that the Justice Verma Committee had said, that a rape that occurs, and I repeat verbatim, cannot legislatively be simply washed away. Gujarat High Court has said a law that does not give married and unmarried women equal protection creates conditions that lead to marital rape. Even in this specific case, the woman does allege that she was sexually abused within the marriage as well, that the courts have cited as grounds for divorce. So what we have and must examine is, why do we as a society hesitate to discuss violence when it comes to what happens within one's home? Because the truth again, and data says that over 90% of cases of sexual abuse is someone known to the survivor, but we don't want to discuss it. And the law does not want to address it. And right now, the law gives a married man free license to rape his wife, and the wife does not have recourse, criminal recourse. Here, at least we're seeing like judgments that are recognizing a woman's right to use this as grounds of cruelty for divorce and seek divorce. Is that enough? Definitely not. But we must question why we are not respecting bodily integrity of a woman within the construct of a marriage, how the laws are disrespecting and violating her fundamental rights, and how we need to address this exception under 375 of the law that allows for this.
Oh, yes, absolutely. In fact, Tusha, a couple of weeks ago, we had this exact debate about the marital rape and why it isn't recognized, and some of the responses that we actually got from those who refused to accept it would have left, did leave me spellbound at least. It was so shocking, but that's what the reality is, right? The refusal to accept that a woman does have those rights, and a crime is still a crime whether or not you're married to that man. But let's come back to this part, which is at what point do we stand up and say it is only the expecting mother's choice? You can seek the guidance from a doctor, Dr. Sonal Kumta, and they can advise you on whether it's safe or unsafe for you and for the baby. But I am looking at examples where courts have refused abortion even when there's been a risk to a child's survival. Courts have refused abortion in 20% of the rape cases, and they have said no. Now, how do we change that?
First of all, thank you very much for having me on your show. And I'm here absolutely in capacity of a medical person, and I do not have much knowledge on law or the legal aspect of it. What I can tell you is, let's start with, as our previous panelists have said, the MTP Act of 1971. It gives us very clear guidelines as to who can terminate a pregnancy. It is always the women's right to continue or discontinue her pregnancy. And there are clear guidelines. The first being, if the pregnancy might be terminated to save the life of the pregnant woman. That is the first clause that we use. The second is if it can be done in order to prevent grave injury, which could be physical or to the mental health of the pregnant woman. The third being in view of substantial risk to the child. If it was born, it would suffer from physical or mental abnormality and be seriously handicapped. The fourth would be as the pregnancy is alleged by the pregnant woman to be caused by rape. And lastly, pregnancy occurs as a risk of a failure of a contraceptive device or a method which are being used by the woman or her partner for contraception. So the law and the MTP Act very clearly tells us that we can terminate a pregnancy in all these circumstances. Also, it is very, very clear that when the woman is seeking a termination in the first trimester, that is up to 13 weeks, she only requires opinion of a single registered medical practitioner. If the pregnancy has gone beyond from 13 to 20 weeks, then the opinion of two registered medical practitioners is required. And we are now waiting for the recent amendment, which will allow in future the pregnancy to be terminated till 24 weeks. However, this is yet not actively into play. So as a practicing doctor at the current moment, I'm allowed to terminate a pregnancy of a patient or a woman if she so desires up to 20 weeks by law.
And after 20 weeks, then we have to go to the court. That's the rule. But Dr. Kumta, one of the panelists earlier raised this point. Science has also, made great progress. So is there a need to relook at these current stipulations as well? Because at the end of it, still, we are having to go to the state after a point.
like I said, I'm just going to be here in medical capacity.
Yes, so in medical capacity, I'm asking
yes.
you, at what point does it begin to become more and more unsafe? It could obviously also be case-to-case basis, but
right.
beyond the medical, the doctor's opinion, should there be more? Should it be just case-to-case and not be a fixed timeline?
Laws are also there to protect, is what I firmly believe.
Okay.
Definitely, if I know, if the woman is clear she does not want to continue pregnancy, then I am clearly of the opinion that she should terminate pregnancy as early as possible. However, for whatever reasons, if they are unsure or there are some other issues that come up later, well, the process of termination of pregnancy in the second trimester will be pretty similar to 20 weeks and beyond. So they would be, in a way, inducing the a mini delivery process so that the pregnancy is evacuated. Of course, the amount of blood loss and the amount of trauma or other things increase as the gestational age increases or as the pregnancy age increases. But after having said that, the method of termination would be more or less similar. Also, beyond 24 weeks, definitely after 26 weeks, the fetus gets the status of viability, and hence, those laws will also come into the picture about the rights of the fetus vis-a-vis the right of the woman.
Okay, let me actually also bring in Professor Aloka, who's heard everybody out as well. Professor Aloka, to the larger point that we are having right now, do we need to relook at the laws to give more power to and the deciding power to actually the woman in our country when it comes to termination of a pregnancy?
First of all, thanks, Tanvi, for having me in your show. Yes, I fully agree with your statement. And this judgment of the Bombay High Court is the first step, I must say, in this way. Because we are talking about the human rights, we are celebrating rights everywhere, we are talking about that women's rights are the part of the human right, then why not women will get the rights on their own body? The reproduction is about the body of the females. So when female has to have the pregnancy in her body, when to have, when not to have, all these decisions must be conferred on the women. So I think now the time is there that more powers on the will be conferred on the women to decide about their reproductive autonomy. It is she who will take these issues into consideration. And now you see the context where the woman wants to terminate the pregnancy. It is a domestic violence and they are on the verge of taking the divorce. Now what will happen not only to the women but also to the child which will come into the world? So when the father is not there to take care of the child, why this woman alone will take care of the child? Now it's better that she will continue with her own life, with her own decisions. And the law also says that the priority is to be given to the rights of the women, and that right of the fetus is secondary as far as this act is concerned. So I think more rights, more amendments in laws are required to give power to decide to have the pregnancy, and when the women want to have it, should be conferred on women. Yes, Tanvi.
Maternal mortality ratio is 3 times higher in countries with restrictive abortion laws. That means that more women die during an illegal or improper abortion. In countries that are very restrictive with their abortion laws, obviously, because then women go in for these illegal procedures, secret procedures. In our country itself, unsafe abortions kill 10 women every day. Third leading cause of maternal deaths. That's what the experts have said. Third leading cause. Then why is it, Poonam Uthreja, that we are still talking about bringing about more changes in these laws? The latest set that has come in doesn't factor that in.
Reproductive rights or reproductive justice is a far cry from for India. We don't even recognize the woman's right to even decide whether she wants a baby or not. And in a country where women don't have the freedom to plan their pregnancies, we impose all kinds of impediments in their way for having an abortion. And that also ends up, 90% of the women end up having abortion in back alleys because of the stigma, because of the fear, because also women find out they're pregnant often after 12 weeks are over. And so the problem in India is that we do not recognize rights of a woman. And so in that situation, we neither worry about our health. We have the data, as you said, not only globally, but we know that maternal mortality, abortion-related mortality is 8% in India. And for every woman who dies, there are 20 women who live dying after unsafe abortions or due to maternal health. We also know that an unwanted child has a much higher chance, unplanned, unwanted child, of being undernourished, of women, 50% higher chance of going through mortality. You know, Tanvi, it is a society that does not go deep or even superficially into the needs of women's mental, emotional, physical health. And that's why I'm so excited you're doing this program today after a really welcome judgment. I hope other judges, I hope that the lawmakers will pay greater attention. You know, if you look at the MTP Act, recommendations for the amendments, I tell you, every time I speak to anybody in the health ministry, the bureaucracy is totally not only sympathetic, but uses science and everything. The problem is with our lawmakers and our society that is so patriarchal, that doesn't care cares very little about women and their health. And it's as simple as that. And I think we have to all get together and make more sound, demand, not only have debates and conversations, but put our asks out collectively for women. And this is a no-brainer. You know, the amendments that have been suggested and the fact that we are, you know, the linkage between maternal morbidity, maternal mortality is so high with abortion. We must, and we have the data. You know, India is a country that has the best data, except for morbidity. We have enormous data on abortion, on everything else. And we have some large assessments and studies. We also have a very receptive, as I said, bureaucracy and public health system. They understand the problem, but it is the social stigma and patriarchy and the lack of concern about women is my simple answer. And this is not an answer, Tanvi, only to this question that you have raised. It is towards rape in marriage. It is towards violence against women. When, you know, the fact that first time we've even talked about the mental health and mental well-being of women, when there is so much domestic violence in this country, where mental well-being is, or mental hazards is what is the outcome. So we really, really must shout out, we must ask, and we must use evidence-based advocacy in a country where all that our political leadership and many of our citizens also are obsessed. How do you control women and have them make two-child norm? Women don't have control in their fertility, recognize it. So therefore, abortion has to be an inalienable right and an absolute right.
But I agree with you. But the other side of the argument, Trisha, often is that, well, it is also the state's responsibility to protect life, whether that is of the mother who may be in danger if she undergoes, the abortion or under certain medical conditions, or even the fetus. Now, that's essentially where the debate comes and gets stuck. A woman and her reproductive rights, or the state's duty towards saving lives.
I mean, that is more of an American argument that you see when they fight against Roe v. Wade. We don't really see that argument here. And if you want to talk about that argument, well, then you have to define at what period do you recognize life? At what period of the fetus do you recognize life? So, and thereafter, sure, one can recognize life if the state can also then guarantee that the child will be taken care of. In this case, if you speak about this case, the mother clearly said that the husband is refusing to economically, financially support the child. So then, are you so keen on making sure that a woman gives birth to a child without accounting for the child having access to infrastructure that will support the well-being of the child? Right? So these are very much real factors that one must take into consideration when one talks about human rights for an unborn child. Who then is going to take care of the child after the child is born to make sure the child has access to quality education, quality health, a good environment? So again, I am really heartened by this judgment because this takes into consideration the mental disposition of a mother and how that will affect not just her health, but also the potential health of her child should she be forced to give birth to a child against her will and consent. And so I think that argument is a moot point.
Okay,
so whoever wants to say that, let them take responsibility for these children.
So let's bring in the medical argument then, Dr. Kumta. Is there a medical argument to say, okay, this is the time period, 20 weeks or now 24 weeks that we need to keep it at? 75 countries don't have any time period defined in their abortion laws. It's upon request of the woman, and that's that.
If I were to say the facts about this, we deal with pregnancies on the other end of the spectrum also. So very often a woman who is keen to carry her pregnancy goes into preterm labor. She starts delivering much before her time. And usually when the fetus is more than 24 weeks and definitely more than 26 weeks, as a medical person, we try to do everything in our power to try to save this fetus, save the baby, because we strongly believe that this fetus above 26 weeks for sure is going to have maybe a prolonged neonatal intensive care stay, but may have opportunity to live. So that is the medical part of it. But, as our previous speaker was saying, I strongly feel that it is a woman's right whether she wants to have a pregnancy or not. And what is going to benefit is really educating the society and making the woman aware of her rights. The laws are there since 1971, but how many women are aware of these laws? How many women have easy access to abortion services? There are abortion services all over the country, but they may not even have access. How many of them will go to the right healthcare provider? And how can we try to destigmatize this entire process? These are the key things that I feel, yes, there is literature written on it, but it needs to be put into practice. And, somehow we are better than some of the other countries. I have patients who come from other countries just for termination to me because it is just not allowed. So from that perspective, I would say we are in a better zone, but women must be aware of their rights and should be able to access the right services, what they need at different points in time.
Women need to be aware of their rights. And Mrinalini Deshmukh, is that a big challenge in our country as well? That often gets used as an argument too, that women won't know. They are not unsafe, there aren't safe abortion services. They themselves don't realize what their rights are, how to go about it, and whether it would be safe to abort or not. Is that a big challenge for us?
Absolutely, Tanvi. We have to understand the Indian society and the setup in which we are there. So it is of course, medical, which is the first concern which is there. The second one, which is important, is the social structure. I mean, for a woman to be able to express her view that she wants to terminate, I think in most of the families, and I'm saying this with a little bit of experience in my field, is the opposition comes from the family itself. because they are not able to accept that a woman has a sole right to abort the child in the event of the circumstances that we have just discussed. So the first opposition comes from the family, the second comes from the social structures which are there, and obviously ignorance of laws, ignorance of the process to accept whatever the abortion services, as Dr. Kumta has rightly stated, which is available at every corner, and the acceptance of the legal structure to accept that a woman has a sole right over it. The counter argument to this in many of the cases, I'm just putting it across so that for the people to think, is, does a child belong only to a woman? The men's rights, whoever the organization would be, does it mean that the child only belongs to a woman? The husband or the partner, if in case of not from a marriage, does he have any say in the continuation of the pregnancy and in the birth of the child? Yes, in this particular case that we are debating, the husband had refused to provide for the child, and there was no assurance given to the lady that if she were to go ahead with it, there could be something that she could fall back upon. But if this was not an exceptional circumstance, then does a man have a right to choose, if there is no medical abnormality and such things are there, whether he has a right to decide or not is also a question that the lawmakers will have to consider at some point of time to make it a very balanced and a gender neutral kind of an approach. But my personal view, and I've given this only for the thought for the people on this panel and to your viewers, but my personal point is, obviously the first right has to be with the woman. As they say, the first right of refusal has to be with the woman, because she's the one who is going to, and pregnancy is not only a physiological thing, it's also an emotional and a mental thing. That is why you say, in smaller houses also, you say a pregnant woman should be kept happy, cheerful. Even doctors always suggest, don't watch stressful movies, don't go to any of these things, and be very in a happy surrounding. So why do the doctors say that? They don't need to say that, but they know, and from their experience, that it's extremely important for a woman to come from a space which is a very healthy emotionally, mentally, and in every which ways which are there. But this counter argument would also come up at some point of time for debate if this were to be allowed.
So even in the new law, Mrinalini Deshmukh, even the new amended law, which is not yet notified, but out there, mental trauma or domestic violence isn't recognized as one of those conditions?
So no, I don't think so.
No, it isn't. It isn't.
No, so I would like to come in. As I said earlier, that definitely the law accepts that whenever there is grave injury to the physical or the mental health of a pregnant woman, we can terminate her pregnancy. Now, how you will classify or how will you prove what is physical health is very easy. There may be certain medical disorders or some reports. Mental health will require, a very detailed and a very difficult decision to make. But yes, one of the clauses does say that we can terminate in case of grave physical or mental health issues to the pregnant.
You're referring to the 1971 MTP Act or the amended one?
No, I'm talking about the 1971 MTP Act provisions.
So then why would this woman have had to go to the court?
I'm not hearing you very well. Why did she go to court?
Why did this woman, the case that prompted this debate, have to go to court then, Trisha, if it already the law prescribes that you can go ahead with an abortion if there is mental or physical injury?
Sorry. Can I answer that?
Yes, Poonam Mutreja, please.
So because she had crossed her 20 weeks, right now it is legal only to get pregnancy aborted till 20 weeks. So that's why she had to go to the court. Now, if she had gone to an illegal practitioner, they are likely to have done it. But when you go to a legal professional, they cannot break, but most of them do not break the law. And second, I just wanted to say that, in response to your earlier question, that only 22% women in India are aware that abortion is legal and it is a right, and they don't need their husbands or mother-in-laws to sign off on. But on the other hand, a large percentage of women who go and get abortion, for instance, there was an abortion study in Maharashtra, 40% of the women got aborted without informing their husbands or others. And why do they do it? We must understand that. And the reason they do it is because women do not have decision making on if and when and how many children they should have. Women do not have the autonomy to use contraceptives. So tragically, abortion is a proxy for contraception and for such large numbers. And I think as a country, we should be ashamed of that. And if all these 16 million women had to go to the court, God help us. I mean, it is enough. Going to the court is enough to destroy women's mental health. Why should she, even in the case which we are welcoming the judgment, poor woman, why did she have to go through this medical board and explain to the world what happens in her bedroom? She knows what's happening in her bedroom, and on the basis of that, she decided she does not want to have. Why should she have to tell the whole world whether her husband is paying or not? These are very personal, private things. Why should we make women's bodies and public specimens? And especially in times of COVID, when there is so much mental stress everybody's going through, and women's reproductive health, ability to access family planning, ability to access abortion has already suffered so much. And we are adding to it. This is an opportunity to basically get it clear in our heads. What is a woman's right? And I am very worried about, the suggestion that should men have a right or not. It is women's body. It is they who are going to bear the child, and they are going to care for the child. And I think a woman knows best what to do with the decision around having a baby. And, women are rational human beings, and women don't go endlessly abort babies for no reason, only when there is a reason. And if they had control over their fertility, you would have much fewer abortions.
Yes. Okay. Fair enough. Trisha,
sorry,
go ahead.
Just 1 second. As a continuation to what the previous panelist Poonam Mathreja said, the reason why this woman had to go to court is with the new parliament bill that was passed, the exception now has been increased for up to 24 weeks, provided the life of a pregnant woman is at risk. So here, the court, through their judgment, and that has to be assessed by two individual doctors. So here, the court, through their judgment, had to assess that on merits of her case, yes, it would be a grave danger to her life if she continued on with the pregnancy, and that, it would be compromise her mental health, and that would qualify as a risk to her life. So that was why she had to move to court. And again, I have immense respect for Mrinalini, but I echo what the previous panelist said about a man, about a husband having a say on whether a woman should carry on with a pregnancy or not. Look, we're talking about a woman's body here. And it goes back to the question about who has decision-making authority over what a woman gets to do with her body, and the autonomy of her body must be respected if we are to believe that both sexes must be treated equally. Now, if you want to have a conversation about maternity, paternity leave, that being unequal, yes, definitely. Let's have a conversation about that. But giving our husband carte blanche status to have controlling powers over a woman's body is highly problematic.
I think Mrinalini Deshmukh was also just trying to put across that point for conversation.
Yes. I'm not subscribing to that, but when we have a discussion, we must have a very balanced thing, because you must also see what would be the men, the fathers who are expecting, and maybe there may be certain men who want to take care of the child, even if the woman is not in a great space. But again, it's a very individualistic, subjective view that the courts will have to take. What I was trying to say, Trisha, is you and me are on the same page. It's just that we should also consider in our discussion a contrarian view, only to make it a very balanced discussion. That was the only purpose for me to put this forward in this evening.
Okay, so two points that have been raised that I want to take across to Professor Aloka Sharma also. Professor Sharma, why does a woman have to go to a medical board, and why does she then have to go to a court? on for certain cases. Should that be part of the legal framework or not?
Yeah, Tanvi, it is already a part of the legal framework. As the other panelists have already mentioned that why a woman has to go to the court, it is because of the law, because 20 weeks is the period, and for more than that, the permission is to be taken.
Now, no, that's exactly what I'm saying, Professor Sharma. Should that be the law? Does a woman require to take the permission from a court?
So the law should be that it is the choice of the women.
Yeah.
Of course, she will take the consultation from the doctor, from her gynecologist, whether it is safe for me to abort the child at this stage or not. There is no such issue of the medical board by the courts or any other thing. It is her personal decision, and her personal gynecologist will tell her better regarding her safety. So if it is safe for her, definitely the doctor will advise, and if it will not, the doctor will refuse, and then she will definitely will take care of herself. And I must add here that awareness should be there. The women are not even aware about that there is a law regarding domestic violence. So what about this abortion and other things? So in India, women are highly unaware about their rights. And I say that we must, in our capacities, we try to spread the awareness about various rights of the women, including the right of reproductivity, that she is the master of her own choice. As in Maharashtra, ma'am was telling that women were using this even without telling the parents, the family members. So if the women are aware that it is their own right, yes, they can use the laws in a better way. Laws are there to protect them. Of course, there are some kind of improvements which are required in the modern context of the women's right. And it will gradually, I feel now that there are more changes in the law. And as we have seen the recent judgment also in the same line. So I think that women should be more aware. And as far as doctor's point was, I must say that when the women, when the husband and wife are having cordial relation, everything is fine. They can discuss about the issue of having pregnancy at what time. But the issue comes when there is problem between the rights of the husband and wife, and then I must say it is women who must decide, because ultimately it is the body of the woman who will face all kind of problems and issues, so that she will be the master in that sense. So consensus will be there if everything is cordial and nice in the family. That's what I want to add. Yes, Tanvi.
Okay. I just one more question then, and back to Dr. Sonal Kumta on this. Dr. Sonal Kumta, in your medical expertise, I ask you this, that what is the argument to say, okay, for 20 to 24 weeks, you need a medical board to look into the matter and decide, and it's not enough for having a single doctor to look at it? Why do you need two experts?
Okay. First of all, two experts are required for any pregnancy above 12 weeks. Whether you want to call it a medical board or opinion of two doctors, it doesn't matter. At this current moment, since 20 to 24 weeks is a gray zone yet, we do not have a clear amended law, and that has to come from the states. And once we have the green signal to terminate pregnancy till 24 weeks, we will not require any other medical board. It will be, again, two doctors consenting that this woman can go ahead with a termination. We need to cite on our form what is the reason for which we are terminating the pregnancy.
Okay, so why do you need two doctors to do that? Are there cases where there will be disagreements on the safety of the mother or the child? Why do you need two people to do that?
Because the first trimester pregnancy is a lot easier to terminate. When you have a larger fetus, the pregnancy has grown, it would be like a mini delivery. It will result in more bleeding. The time taken for abortion may be more. It's not going to be a OR or a OT procedure. It's going to be where you are trying to induce the woman to start having pains. And these medications may take 12 to 24 even more sometimes to act. There will be a significant bleeding. It has to be supervised. And also the justification See, if a woman is terminating a pregnancy early, couple of months by the time she realizes, but if she has chosen to do nothing for 3 months and now she's trying to terminate a pregnancy at, a 4th month or 5th month, we just need to understand what has changed in these last couple of months. And if it fits into the criteria, there is no resistance from a doctor. As in my practice, as in every other gynecologist who we endorse the Federation of Obstetrics Gynaec Society of India rules, we only require the consent of the woman.
Okay,
no
fair
other
enough.
Consent is required for termination.
Between June 2016 and April 2019, 175 appeals were heard by various courts as per the registered data on abortion. In the 15 months since the pandemic hit us and things went haywire, to August 2020, 243 appeals were heard. 243 women had to go to the court to get permission to abort their own pregnancy. While yes, there are nuances to it, there are arguments to be made on medical safety, safety of the mother, and whether this procedure would harm her physical well-being or mental well-being as well. But beyond that, should it be anything else? And even then, should it be her choice or the state's decision? Once well informed, once well explained on what the risks are, what the advantages and the disadvantages are, should it not simply be the woman's choice, married or unmarried, 20 years old or 40 years old? Should it not just be the woman's choice to decide with what she wants to do with her pregnancy? I leave it for you to think about. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for joining me on this conversation.